This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Hey folks, how we doing? I can imagine quite a few of you are probably drawing something right now, am I right? Or maybe you're sitting there waiting for inspiration to strike. Well, guess what? You're in luck, because boy do we have a treat in store. Today, we have a special guest on board helping me discuss today's topic, so be nice, be nice. But they came to me a short while ago with a video idea that seemed really interesting, and one that felt pretty relevant when looking at the current digital and artistic landscapes. So, give it up for today's special guest, Artise.
Sup Streaks, I'm Artise, and I want to thank Apollo for hearing me out on this collab. Coming at you semi-live from the Poco Art 107 channel, where we're gonna draw each other's Pokemon team. So be sure to check it out after this video.
Yes, indeedy. Please be sure to check that out when it drops. It was really fun to work on. Now, I don't know if anyone else has noticed, but this seems to have become a progressively worse trend as time marches on. We all know the typical memes and shorts floating around online of some average Joe trying to follow along to a beginner artist tutorial, only to see that the supposed teacher has created a masterpiece while they were still struggling to create something that passed for a circle. And we're probably also familiar with some big name artists right here on this platform who have made a full-time gig out of creating tutorials where they try to coach people into unlocking their own creative potential, all the while having their own very distinct way of working that achieves a specific result that works very well for them. And by extension, we're probably also familiar with how so many of these artists, whether it be on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, or whatever other platform artists are trying to survive on these days, end up getting absolutely lambasted for daring to insinuate that people should draw in the very specific way that they do. Except they don't. No one is forcing anyone to draw in a certain way. I swear down on my nan's pronouns, please understand this. I don't know if it's art class trauma from your teacher scribbling all over your 10-hour painting or what, but these artists who end up finding success or a niche audience are not sitting there knives sharpened and ready to strike while you scramble to create something that appeases them. And yet, there is always a small group of people who act as if this is the case. But why? Why is that a thing? I have my own theories on that, as I'm sure Artise does as well, so that's what we're going to be looking into today. If you like what you're hearing, then please consider liking and subscribing. Please note that any opinions expressed in this video are purely... Oh my god, are they at it again? My neighbours are going at it like rabbits lately. I don't know what is going on. Please note that any opinions expressed in this video are purely speculative and not based in fact, unless evidence is given to state otherwise. It feels weird having to say that in a video that isn't focused on history or research, but hey, gotta keep our bases covered. So, without further ado, let's roll. So if we're going to be talking about giving advice and all that, then here's a wee tidbit from me. If you're wanting to put yourself out there and have your work seen by more people, you're going to need a website that reflects you and all of your wonderful skills, talents and interests, which is why I am happy to introduce you to this video's sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace is an all-in-one platform for creating your own personalized neck of the woods on the internet, whether it's for professional purposes, maybe a portfolio, an online shop, or, if like Lord, you just need a place to rate and review the world's best onion rings, which is what I would say if I liked onions, which I don't, because onions are gross. Why are you booing me? I'm right, and I know I'm right. You cannot convince me otherwise that anyone actually likes that disgust. If you're looking to be discovered fast and by as many people as possible, then thanks to Squarespace's integrated SEO tools, every website is optimized to be indexed with meta descriptions, an auto-generated sitemap, and allows your site to be shown more often on search engines and bring more customers right to your digital doorstep. If you run an online store or offer digital goods like commissions, Squarespace also offers professional, on-brand invoice capabilities that can help streamline your workflow with proposals, contracts, and seamless online payments, without having to jump back and forth, allowing you to focus your full attention on your customers' needs. If that sounds like what you're looking for, then don't just take my word for it. Check out squarespace.com directly today for a free trial to see what you think. And once you're all set up and raring to go to squarespace.com/fionapollo to get 10% off your first website or domain. You know what I'd really like to see? A review site for cheese boards. Someone asked me like ages ago if I would ever consider living outside of Europe, and to be completely honest, I was like, no, I like cheese too much, man. It just doesn't hit right anywhere else, I'm sorry. Anyway, let's move on.
Like, there are so many points of access for art, whether you want to do traditional, whether you want to do digital, like, even within those mediums, like, if you want to do, like, abstract, if you want to do anime, if you want to do landscapes, like, everything is at the press of a button. I think, though, I will give some people credit, I think that does kind of contribute to, like, being overwhelmed, I guess, and not knowing where to start.
Oh, yes.
And I guess to that extent, I can kind of understand where some of the frustration comes from. What I don't agree with, though, is having that frustration pour out towards the person who is trying to help you.
So in this section, I wanted to go over why precisely people might have such visceral reactions to other artists doling out their own tailor-made art advice. And to do so, we need to look at the way in which individuality, self-expression, and mob mentality can occasionally intersect. So when it comes to art on its own, learning about art and actually doing art are often two completely different beasts, which a lot of people don't realize because watching someone else create a piece and knowing the different techniques required to achieve a specific result in your head isn't quite the same as attempting those techniques with your own two hands. Kind of like how people scream at top-notch chefs on TV despite only knowing how to put something in the microwave. What a lot of people seem to forget about art is that it is in fact both a physical and mental mini-workout. What I mean by this is that in order to physically draw, say, a manga character, you have to have a certain level of muscle memory, hand-eye coordination, and a sense of visualization, which is in essence a trained mind's eye view of what it is you're trying to manifest onto a page. And all of these things are only achievable in the same way as learning a dance or carrying out a gymnastic routine, which is through practice. But how on earth would you even know where to start with that? Well, thanks to the internet, trying to find a tutorial or art advice video became an exceedingly easy endeavor. There are 1,000,001 points of access in terms of information on art and how to create it, which in theory seems like a positively fantastic thing. And it is. The only problem with it, or one of them anyway, AI slop notwithstanding, is that unfortunately we are human, and there is only so much information a human can take in at once before it stops being an intake and instead becomes an overload. And humans can react to overload in some pretty disproportionate ways. The sheer volume of advice, inside knowledge, and all of that can be so vast within any medium, not just in art, but it is especially true with the art world due to a couple of factors, the main factor being accessibility. Because art is such a fluid thing and is limited only by each individual person's objectivity, anything you create has the potential to be considered art in its own right. Many people tend to conflate this with something that is intended to be pleasing to the eye, but that's not necessarily the case. In the wise words of Rainbow Rowell from Eleanor and Park, art wasn't supposed to look nice, it was supposed to make you feel something. With that said, however, that can also lead to a great deal of contradictions and contention. There are still many people who have a preference towards certain types of art that look a certain way, which is absolutely not a bad thing by any stretch. But these particular styles do often require a certain degree of discipline and learned skill. But with so many different paths to achieve that, from art advice videos to written tutorials to online courses to social media inspo to millions upon millions of reference sites and resources, this amount of choice can cause people to be overwhelmed and conflicted, which can also lead to frustration and even resentment towards the entire process. And as for the process of learning art online, the general pipeline I've seen for people at least, and this most definitely is not a one-size-fits-all kind of deal, is that most people at the beginning can end up feeling dejected, citing that they will never measure up to those who are providing these tips and tricks in the first place they are attempting to learn from. This is usually right at the start and when most would give up or try something else. But the ones who do manage to shake this off and keep at it will then move on to the next stage, which is sometimes a sense of competitiveness. Competitiveness, by the way, is not always negative. Sometimes it can be good, and you'll often find yourself cheering on the people around you just as much as you may find yourself comparing or tracking your progress side by side. Sadly, this tends to be where some of the problematic attitudes we're focusing on today typically arise, as once someone becomes comfortable enough with a specific skill or way of doing something, because the internet also has a habit of allowing people to feed into what is effectively an echo chamber, some can begin to assert their own feelings on these subjects in a pretty drastic manner. One example I want to mention is a situation involving a Japanese artist who creates drawing tutorials for free and who wasn't even the person who caused anything to go down. This artist is called Manga Materials, and if you frequent places like Twitter or Instagram, you may well have seen their works pop up from time to time, as their anatomy and perspective tips are incredibly in-depth, very well done, and they're pretty useful for all types of artists to draw upon. What happened with this artist wasn't even something that was done by them, it was supposedly done by their English translator. Unfortunately, it seems like the original post was deleted because of all of the harassment they received, but this translator basically made the grave mistake of using the word beginner in one of the translations, to which users replied very negatively en masse and caused such a stink about it that the artist ended up deleting the post. The translator tried to take responsibility and apologise in order to take some of the heat off them, but the artist did later back off quite a bit from Twitter for a while due to the amount of harassment levied at them. Now, the bulk of that particular controversy more or less stems from the fact that Twitter is like the doom mountain of the internet. No one is happy and everyone hates each other, and for some reason people are so reactionary that they have to respond to things instead of scrolling on by. But my point still stands. So many self-proclaimed artists felt so threatened by the mere notion that a common mistake highlighted in a tutorial is considered beginner, when they felt that the art being used in the example is far above beginner level, and interpreted that as a personal attack on them, which is just honestly wild. The thing about the internet, which honestly kind of grinds my gears a bit, is that there is this competitive aspect where people want to stand out but also be conventional enough that lots of people like what they do and gravitate to it, resulting in a large amount of engagement, praise, and such to that effect. And this is especially true when it comes to those who end up gaining some degree of notoriety, such as, for example, a known artist whose popularity grants them a fair amount of sway in certain communities. And the very unfortunate aspect of all of this is that we've definitely come to be familiar with being placed on top of the old pedestal and being expected to do no wrong at all whatsoever, because if you do, you'll be swiftly pushed off and replaced with the next sacrifice. It's terrifying and extremely unrealistic, and we really do need to start cutting people a little bit more slack.
Alright, so you mentioned Lavender Town. So we've kind of seen that she gets quite a lot of the flack on YouTube. What do you think about like her tutorials and stuff?
Okay, I'm gonna be honest and just say I think she's great. I think she's fine. This might be coming from a place of bias because during like the COVID days, and I was just trying to find different tutorials to help me get started into digital art. I found her tutorials very like easy to follow and simple. Of course, like I didn't follow every little thing she did, but like she always says in her videos, it's optional advice. Play around with some things. If something works and if it doesn't, sure, fine, whatever. Or cross around. I just think she offers a lot of good advice, and the fact that she has like an art degree, it's not a make or break to me because because art can be a skill that can be taught or like adapted over time. It doesn't even matter whether or not she has a degree, but she has more experience of even telling people, hey, yeah, I went to art school. Here's what was helpful, and here is what like put my art backwards. And again, that's a good cautionary tale with that experience of her sharing that. Especially like there was a point in my life where I thought I wanted to go to art school, but after watching that video, not anymore. That's not going to be in the cards for me. I'm no stranger to being a self-conscious artist, especially online. I've been drawing traditionally since childhood, from cartoony to realism. 2020, I wanted to learn more about digital art, and during my research, I found videos by Lavender Town that helped me the most. I enjoyed her creepy but cozy channel and art style, as if Tim Burton in Adventure Time had a baby. I found her advice helpful to me at times, as I was learning digital art. Of course, I don't agree with every little piece of advice Lavender Town offers. I use what's helpful to me, which is the goal of her videos. In fact, it's the goal of literally hundreds of art advice videos on this platform and beyond. Yet, despite adding to the pool of free and accessible resources that could and has helped many artists of various levels, some people find it insulting. I can't disagree more. All the optional free advice for me then. Either from self-taught or formally educated artists, there's a lot that could be learned from their experiences and mistakes that current artists could relate to.
The fact that people are kind of complaining about these tutorials as well, knowing that the alternative is, I don't know, getting shouted at by a professor for not drawing something properly, it's crazy.
Yeah, and there's like far more hurdles to overcome it all, because like for some people it's like a financial block to even step foot into one of these like universities and such. But with a YouTube tutorial, even from a beginner like YouTube tutorial artist, that's still free.
Yeah, exactly.
You wouldn't rush to apply makeup if you didn't know the basics, and these tutorials could help prevent you from looking like a clown. Knowing that an artist that I enjoy and admire might also struggle with some seemingly basic techniques is very humbling, because if they can improve, who's to say that I or even you can't? Some people just need to be willing to swallow their pride or stop chugging the haterade and allow themselves to be a flawed human being like the rest of us. Life gets much simpler that way. Even Lavender Town, despite going to art school, does not present herself as the end-all be-all of art knowledge. She understands every artist develops their own style over time. She has countless advice videos that offer such guidance. So for the life of me, I can't understand why other artists deem it appropriate to bash optional advice.
Like, even if you don't kind of consider the tutorial itself to be for beginners, like, there's still an aspect of being able to just pick it up and run with it.
Right, and plus the accessibility is amazing. There's like a bajillion, as you know, of course, there's like a bajillion art apps out there that could utilize. I didn't even know where to start, but I've been using IBS Paint for like over 5 years now. That's the one I'm most comfortable with and I'm more familiar with, and I like and I love seeing that more artists are opening up to it, because that helps me find more tutorials, and seeing that, oh my gosh, if they can do this in IBS, who's to say that I can't? They figured out a way and they're sharing this knowledge so I can do it too. I feel so grateful. That's awesome. I don't find it necessary to publicly put someone else's art on blast just to hype up your own. Seems like a lot of wasted energy used to bash an unproblematic artist for just existing instead of improving your own craft or, minding your business. Props to the kind people out there defending her and speaking out against such haters. It's a lot to ask, but it's best to widen your perspective and train of thought during your art journey. Less of, oh, look how advanced this art is, I'll never get to that level, and more of, I'm inspired by such skilled artists that have been honing their craft for some time, and if they can be great, then so can I.
There's so many ways you can go about it, and there's nothing that's really right or wrong. It's just whatever you feel comfortable doing, and it's however much you want to kind of expand your knowledge. Not necessarily skill, not necessarily what you're putting out. It's just what you want to see and what you want to kind of project back.
Right. And I would like to challenge that, what you said about it's not exactly right or wrong. I would like to argue that it's right to try, because you'll never know until you actually, like, to do the AI meme, pick it up, pick up a pencil, pen, anything. It's right to try. It's wrong to, hate on other people instead of, like, what are you doing? You're wasting your energy when you could be drawing.
Yeah. It's right to try, it's wrong to project.
Yes.
This phenomenon is most definitely not contained to the art world, but it is seen as being much more common in art-based communities because, well, what do we actually expect when you put all of this together? The pure subjectivity of what people consider good and bad art, combined with the very polarizing and volatile sense of personal worth, ignited by the notion of a prominent online artist who dares to share their own tips and tricks that are relevant to their own specific definition of art. Throw in the whole concept of the internet being a very hyper-individualist hellhole at the moment, where people have become way too comfortable offering unsolicited criticism because something doesn't precisely cater to their own personal taste, and voila! Of course, people are going to take an art YouTuber with a draw this not that thumbnail, or a Japanese artist using the word beginner in their translated tutorial as a personal affront and seek to put them in their place. It doesn't make it right, but I think it definitely seems a bit clearer as to how these attitudes arise and situations unfold, which is why it's so important to not get swept up in this manner of thinking, and instead reflect and assess whether or not it's really warranted. Is someone using the word beginner or advising people on a particular method of drawing really that big of a deal that it fills you with rage, to the point where you have to leave a nasty comment or call them terrible things or say that their art is actually horrendous? If it is, then I think you need to take a step back and find a healthier way to deal with those emotions first and foremost, because if you're saying those things so freely on the internet, it's a pretty slippery slope to it influencing how you react to things you don't like or agree with in real life as well. But hey, that's just my own advice from one artist to another. Or two, for today rather. Anyway, moral of the story is, if you don't like it, keep scrolling. That's all I really have to say on this. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed, and thank you again to Arties for coming aboard today to discuss this topic with me. This was really fun. I'm honestly loving the chance to collaborate with more people again this year, and hopefully there are going to be many more collabs to come. Got any plans for this weekend? If all goes well, this video should be up by the 15th, which means I'll be letting loose in a rage room. I can hear the crunch of all that broken glass already.
Oh, those are the best. Very relaxing, especially to death metal. I'll be kicking back coastside in Hello Kitty Island Adventures. It's so much fun to run, swim, and just float around the island, collecting items and completing quests. Oh, I love it. Thanks again for having me, Apollo. It's been a blast. Almost as fun as drawing each other's Pokemon teams on my channel, which y'all should definitely check out.
Definitely check that out when you guys can. It's really good and we had a lot of fun. I'll be adding a link to it in the video description. Thank you as always to my fantastic patrons. Thank you to my YouTube peeps, Jesse Sparks, Manuel Legzon Gonzalez, Ash Valentine, Mystic Mind, Lauren R, Pedanticat, Ed Boy, Hero Sky Arts, and Steph Goes Doodles. And an extra special thanks to my indie production supporters, Morgan LaFay DeThin, Matty A, Kiyoshi, and Roundcat. If you'd like to become a patron yourself, a link to my page can be found in the description below.
Stay safe, folks, and we'll speak to you soon.